The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, sir. The Reverend Dr. Philip Ramick, who is an elder statesman in Fox Hill, penned these words, which young children say every morning in school. I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, one people, united in love and service. And so, Mr. Speaker, in rising to move this bill, I make that pledge at the start of this intervention because this bill is about the Bahamas, its identity, its security, its integrity. I misquoted him. And so, by the way, today I also pledge, in the words of Timothy Gibson, to excel. And so, Mr. Speaker, I pledge my allegiance to the flag, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, one people, united in love and service. Mr. Speaker, let me say something which is obvious. This is not North Korea. This is not North Korea. This is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, an open, democratic, transparent society. An open, democratic, transparent society. There is nothing as intellectually compelling and interesting to me than the confluence of rational thought and Christian faith in one package. And I recall this prayer from the Reverend Malcolm Boyd, who was an Episcopalian priest who died last week, from his book, Talking with God Prayers, in his best-selling work in 1965 called Are You Running With Me, Jesus? And the prayer goes like this. This morning, Jesus, I got to move fast. Got to get into the bathroom, wash up, grab a bite to eat, and run some more. Where am I running? You know these things I can't understand. It's not that I need you to have to tell me. What counts most is just that somebody knows, and it's you. That helps a lot. So I'll follow along, okay? But lead, Lord. Now I've got to run. Are you running with me, Jesus? Amen. Today's policy decisions are impatient of debate. And Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Blink, made the case that in the choices of decision-making between acting on instinct or deliberation as the two alternatives, the outcomes are broadly the same. And if anything, the balance lies in favor of acting on instinct. So if there's anything that 40 years of work in public policy in this country has taught me, and that is this, that the longer you take to roll out something, the more likely it is to get derailed. This is a society, in my view, that in some things you have to present it as a fait accompli. Oftentimes, results have to be imposed from the outside, as we recently saw in the OECD strictures, where they changed the way we do business in terms of banking. Mr. Speaker, there are many human beings in this country, human beings, that are waiting on this bill to help get their lives in order. Immigration is a blunt instrument. It is a policing action. But at the same time, it requires sensitivity, and humanity. This country is often at extremes on this issue, with people polarized on one side of it or the next. The government, myself as the adjudicating authority, has to be strict but measured, stern but humane. So today is the time to act. We're never going to get it perfectly right, but we have to start. Many people forget that this policy started out last year when day after day, 100 at a time, were arriving from the south of us on rickety boats, swamping our country and its resources. The Bahamian people were fed up, and the government had to act. So this, Mr. Speaker, is about one thing and one thing alone: making our country secure, securing the borders, and putting Bahamians first. We need to act with dispatch and get this over with. It is simple, clear, and uncomplicated. And the message is this: everyone in the country must be documented to be here. Nothing more, nothing less. This means every man, woman, and child. I explained why I took the attitude I did and would not blink and will not blink. I talked about people being falsely portrayed as victims by people who have a political agenda, and I battled those folks with their political agenda. The other thing I want to make it plain at the outset, with due respect to him, is I am not Loftus Rogan. He's a good man in his time, but I am not him, and I'm not trying to do what he did. I cannot compare. But I said in the early stages of this that we would make a serious mistake of going soft and getting wobbly if we had blinked. We are successful because we did not blink. There was an attack on my personal reputation. One critic accusing me of running a gas chamber operation at the detention center at Carmichael Road. Another on his radio program told Haitians that they should not vote for the PLP because of this new policy. All a cacophony of untruths, innuendos, and hatched up nonsense fed by enemies both at home and abroad to derail a policy that everyone should be documented to be in the country. And that's all it is. Fellow who was on his Creole radio show posted something on Facebook saying it was a note to Haitian children: do not vote PLP and start a revolution. And isn't it ironic, Mr. Speaker, that the policy which is designed to help the very people that they say need the help, the very people who need the help, people born in this country to non-national parents who have no documents of identity and no status up to the age of 18, will, under this legislation, be able to get some status. That's what this policy is designed in part to accomplish. And these people have been from day one just railing and ranting and carrying on and doing everything they can to block help for the very people they say they want to help. It is just astounding. Just astounding. But on the other hand, there were scores of letters and phone calls, and most importantly for me, the support of the National General Council of the Progressive Liberal Party. Full, constant, and unwavering support. And I want to thank them. But I wish to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, this is not about me. This is about the policy of the government of the Bahamas. The government of the Progressive Liberal Party. The government of the Right Honourable Member for Centerville. We have made the tough decision for immigration reform. We pledge to work for Bahamians first, as this bill and these policies, as they are designed, do just that. So it is my honor to move this bill, the Immigration Amendment Bill 2015. I so move, and in doing so, I wish to put this matter in context and explain some of the provisions of the bill. I hope the bill has the support of the House. This is a reforming statute. This is simply building on the 1967 Immigration Act, which itself was a compendium of a number of public policy initiatives dating back to the 19th century to deal with immigration in the Bahamas. The measures proposed are not complicated, they're simple, they're not sinister, and they are straightforward. This is about one thing and one thing alone: ensuring that everyone in the Bahamas has some document which shows that they have the right to live and work in the Bahamas. And all of this other stuff about targeting national groups and the allegations of abusing one group or the next did not arise when this legislation was designed and have been invented in the vivid imagination of the opponents of these simple measures. With respect, those are separate issues from this bill and what it seeks to do. We have a long and complex history on immigration and of immigration. And it's not my role or business to revisit any of that today. What I know is that in 1973, we got a constitution which defines citizens of the Bahamas in a particular way. The founding fathers of this country determined what citizenship would be. We have not changed that by law or by constitution since 1973. And we're now in the process of looking at the Constitution again with regard to citizenship issues. This will be the third time that I've been involved in that effort. The first time, I worked out of the Office of Prime Minister to map the campaign following the Darcy-Ryan decision, and the then Pinling administration sought to amend the Constitution to make it clearer who was responsible for granting citizenship of the Bahamas. That effort died in and around 1981. And there have been two efforts since then to amend the Constitution. And each time we come to deal with this issue of citizenship, the extremes are on both sides. So we've not changed the law. The result is that those who do not fall within that category defined as Bahamians in a legal sense. And if you want to see why I'm making this distinction, there are other senses in which you can be Bahamian. If you wish to find out about this, I did the Pinling lecture in 2004. The essay was called What It Means to Be Bahamian. And you can be Bahamian in a legal sense, or you could be Bahamian in the cultural or social context. But the Minister of Immigration is concerned with being Bahamian in the legal sense alone. However, I've said, and I say again, I'm not the Minister of History, and I'm not the Minister of Social Commentary. I'm the Minister of Immigration with a quasi-judicial function to carry out, and I try to do so without fear or favor. My position is that the Immigration Board and the government of the Immigration Board with regard to work permits, and permanent residence, has the absolute right to say who can or cannot land in the Bahamas and who should be excluded from the Bahamas. Always, of course, this is subject to law. However, the law gives the board that right to say who can land in the Bahamas and who cannot land in the Bahamas. The question then is, what status should be granted to those who are not Bahamians in the legal sense to allow them to live here lawfully? In particular, there is a class of persons who have the right at their 18th birthday and before their 19th birthday to apply to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas. That is that category of person who is born to non-Bahamian parents. The other category of concern is the children of Bahamians who are citizens of the Bahamas by virtue of Article 3.2 of the Constitution when read in conjunction with Article 8 of the Constitution. For convenience, I will call it the Sidney Poitier example. And my brother Matthew falls in this category. My brother Matthew was born in the United States. He got his citizenship because my father was born in the Bahamas prior to 1973. So the Constitution under Article 8 gives the right of my father to pass on the citizenship to my younger brother Matthew. But he cannot pass the citizenship, his Bahamian citizenship, on to his children if those children were born outside the Bahamas. So his oldest son, for example, was born in the United States, and he would have to, in order to claim Bahamian citizenship, his oldest son would have to register in the Bahamas as a citizen of the Bahamas. That's what Article 3.2 says. And Sidney Poitier has children who are in that same position. Now, some people in this position waited until they were adults to apply for citizenship of the Bahamas and found themselves in the invidious position of having to renounce their citizenship of origin in order to take on the citizenship of the Bahamas. If they had applied as children, they would not have had to have done so, but once you become an adult, you are called upon to renounce the citizenship of origin. Then the alternative to that is you could take on or apply for permanent residence with the right to work. Now, the law already contemplated that situation with regard to women. So the children of women in the Immigration Act who are born overseas can apply for permanent residence with the right to work, and there's a special category and fee for those children. But it does not make any allowance for men who have children who are Bahamian, who are born outside the country under Article 3.2. So that Sidney Poitier's daughters, for example, if they wanted to apply for permanent residence with the right to work, and they were granted permanent residence with the right to work, under the present law, they would have to pay $10,000 to get that permanent residence with the right to work. So we thought that it would be fair to these people to create an opening in the law which provides a price which is affordable for those individuals. And you will see when you look at the regulations that that price is now $250. So this bill will solve that problem for them by doing two things: creating the status of a resident belonger for them, or allowing them to get permanent residence with the right to work at the cost of $250. In amending the law, we are also conscious of the high level of illegal migration. Since the new administrative measures were introduced on the 1st of November, there's been a dramatic decrease in the number of boats being interdicted at sea. Now, no one wants to take credit for that, so I merely pointed out. Some people suggest that it's really the weather. Since the weather's been bad, the boats have not been coming. But the fact is, since the 1st of November, there's been a dramatic decrease. I believe most people will remember the last one was probably on Christmas Day, when the 119 people arrived from the island of the Turtle in Cuba. In Haiti, in North Haiti. But since that time, we've not had any of those mass interdictions at sea. So it's either the weather or the policies or good fortune. But the fact is, we believe that the psychological climate has changed by sending out a signal to these folk, do not come, because we are serious about sending you back home. And the point we've made also, as the member for South Andros points out, is that the evidence suggests that people are paying anywhere between $1,500 a head to $5,000 US a head on these journeys. So while people are being portrayed as poor victims, this appears to be a sophisticated criminal enterprise which is designed for money making. And these policies are interrupting that enterprise. The policy has been the most popular policy of this government since it came to power in 2012. The public opinion measures on this are in the stratosphere. 85%. Not me, public domain. 85%. And it has the general support of the population. And I used as a measure for this, I said, you know, the Progressive Liberal Party was most popular in 1968. And still, 40% of the population voted with the UVP. So this policy obtained the support. So when you get 85%,
you got UVP, you got everybody there.
That's what I'm saying. This policy, Mr. Speaker, obtained the support of the 3 political parties in the country, something not even the amendments for the rights of women was able to accomplish. This, therefore, is a highly popular policy, but also highly charged. The policy is for the greater good of our country. And as I said, a number of factors can account for the apparent decrease in the numbers. That is the weather. You can't also discount the work of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and their new boats. And of course, the work of the Department of Immigration. And the Director of Immigration and our policy advisor are both sitting in the gallery. So let me acknowledge them, Mr. Pratt and Mr. Nottage, and thank them for the work they've done. And let me also then extend my thanks to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Department of Social Services, and the Ministry of Education for all their support and efforts during this period. But as the poet says, we have miles to go before we sleep. I'd just like to explain some provisions in the bill. There are 19 provisions in the bill. Clause 4 allows for the sanctions of the Act to apply across the board to all persons. Clause 4 allows for the sanctions of the Act to apply across the board to all persons. Clause 5 creates an immigration reserve. This will be patterned after the police reserve. It will allow volunteers to help the regular immigration department do its work. I've spoken before about the lack of manpower in the regular corps. Clause 6 merely repeats what is in the existing statute and places it in a different section of the substantive act. Clause 7 allows for the grant of permanent residence, notwithstanding the death of a spouse, and Clause 8 allows in certain circumstances people who are divorced or separated to continue to have status in the Bahamas, particularly where there are children of the marriage. Clause 9 adds a new section for revocation of permanent residence consistent with the changes to the Act, so that if you remarry, you may lose your permanent residence obtained by virtue of marriage to a Bahamian and you are divorced or separated spouse. Clause 10 of the bill amends Section 19 to say that you must have some valid documentation if you are embarking on a journey outside the Bahamas. So they can't find you on a boat and you say, I'm headed to the States, but you have nothing which shows that you have a passport and a visa to go to the United States. And the point of the earlier amendment to take out the exception for permanent residents and Bahamians is to be sure that the bill applies even to Bahamians who are embarking on those journeys overseas without valid documentation which says, I have a right to go to the United States or to Britain or wherever it is you're headed. That becomes an offense. Clause 11 of the bill amends Section 29 of the Act to increase the penalty for working without a work permit to $10,000 or 5 years in jail. Clause 12 amends Section 30 of the Act to allow for spousal permit to be valid, notwithstanding the death or divorce or separation from the spouse, and to allow for another status after its expiry. So what the mischief here, as I understand it, is that, yes, that many times people, the marriages break down. Divorce takes place. Under the present provisions, if you have a spousal permit, as soon as that takes place, the spousal permit falls away. The wife has no status. They're children of the marriage. The children are with the wife. So what happens to the children? What happens to the wife? So what it's designed to do is to be able to provide some status so that until some other status is obtained. And then it also allows for, where that falls away, it allows for that wife or that former spouse in those circumstances to apply for another status. And there is the Act, as you saw previously, is amended to allow for the board to grant a status based on the former spouse or the fact that you were formally married in certain circumstances. I'm sorry? And the marriage has subsisted for 5 years. Now, Clause 13 invents what is called a resident belongers permit and is available in 3 circumstances. For people where the children of non-Bahamians are born in the Bahamas who reside in the Bahamas. As you're born to non-Bahamians in the Bahamas and you're living here, you can apply for this status. That's A. B, the children of a Bahamian woman born to a foreign man outside the Bahamas. B, the children of a Bahamian woman born to a foreign man outside the Bahamas. And C, the children of a Bahamian father who is Bahamian by virtue of Article 3.2 or Article 8 of the Constitution. That's the example I gave earlier. Yes. Now, clauses 14 and 15 are tidying up provisions. Clause 16 creates a discretion for the minister to formulate a sector policy detailing the manner of and criteria for the exercise of the minister's discretion under the Act. This is meant to provide a more transparent process as to the circumstances under which various permits under the Act are granted. And this is borrowed from the provisions of the Telecommunications Act, which calls for a sector policy. And it's also occasioned by the fact that many times attorneys, people representing others who are applying, people themselves who are applying, want to know, well, how, if I apply, am I really eligible for this? How does the minister apply? How does the board apply its policies with regard to the law? So this is designed for the minister to be able to outline the circumstances, generally speaking, under which the board will exercise its authority. For example, you have this present provision where you can get what's called economic permanent residence by the investment in a home of $500,000. And the financial services sector has been talking to us about changing this policy to allow for various financial services products. So the idea is to be able to promulgate this in a sector policy which everybody will be able to see and understand. That clause also creates the offense of a fraudulent marriage, which is meant to deal with the rising number of complaints about marriages of convenience. Clause 17 creates the legal basis for regulating the detention center. And I will come back to the detention center after going through the provisions of the bill. Clause 18 is a tidying up exercise which makes the penalty applicable for Bahamians and permanent residents for assisting in an illegal landing. And Clause 19 creates a new offense of harboring an illegal person and makes the penalty $10,000 or 5 years. So those are the 19 provisions of the bill which we are seeking to get the support of the House on today. Now let me share with you a report which came to me dated the 9th of March, the subject of which was apprehension of illegal migrants. It said, Mr. Speaker, please be advised that the Royal Bahamas Defense Force patrol craft P-129 apprehended 9 foreign nationals, including 1 Bahamian, 1 Jamaican, 6 Dominicans, and 1 Lithuanian, around 10 a.m. this morning off West End, Grand Bahama, aboard an 18-foot vessel. The Defense Force vessel was alerted by Operation Bahamas Turks and Caicos, OPBAT, officials to a vessel in distress off West End. The 9 occupants were found aboard the vessel by Defense Force Marines and subsequently taken into custody. The apprehended persons were handed over to police and immigration authorities in West End for further investigation and processing. The Bahamian national is expected to be charged with human smuggling. Earlier on Sunday morning, the Defense Force vessel P-48 assisted 4 crew members aboard a 100-foot Haitian freighter that ran aground near, I'm not sure what the pronunciation of this is, Linard or Linard Key, southeast of Marsh Harbor, Abaco, around 8 a.m. that morning. No one was hurt during the incident, and the vessel was refloated without further incident. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to share that because this clearly shows the point I'm making about the reason why this policy is necessary. We have to know who is within our borders. We have 3 countries that surround us. Cuba to the west of us, the Turks and Caicos to the south of us, the United States to the north of us. And we have an obligation to our neighbors not to allow our territory to be used for smuggling people to those countries. That is in our national security interests, not to have our territory used as a staging ground for smuggling people into another country. I want to talk about the detention center. This is a vexing issue. The detention center is much maligned, and I will not add to it, save and except to say that the detention center continues to suffer from being under-resourced and poorly managed. I do not join with those who say those horrible things about the detention center without knowing firsthand what the issues are. The government has a report which made recommendations on its management, and the report and the need for urgent repair. And the government is fully aware of all that is required to get this detention center fixed. I need to say, children with mothers are no longer housed at the detention center. To repeat that. Children with mothers are no longer housed at the detention center. Food is prepared by the Department of Social Services. I am advised that the food is nutritious, but what I understand the real complaint is that the type of food is not an acceptable diet for some of the detainees. There is no violation of the religious rights of detainees in this regard, as far as I am aware, which would, in my view, be a problem if that issue arose. But I'm told, for example, that the detainees, some of the detainees have objected to being fed grits. I wish to report, Mr. Speaker, that there are now 3 reported cases of chickenpox in the facility. There is a need for a proper isolation facility. And so one person, we checked this morning, one person is in isolation this morning. One person with chickenpox, I'm advised, has already been repatriated, but 2 other suspected cases are now, it's 1 in isolation, but there were 2 other suspected cases, one of which is now in isolation. The repatriation flights that should have gone out are now scheduled for tomorrow, and if they take place, that should relieve the numbers in the facility. The Public Health Department is au fait with the details and are managing the protocols to deal with the chickenpox cases. I'm advised that when the first case occurred, there was a vaccination effort to prevent the disease from spreading. The Parliamentary Secretary will monitor the process and report to me and I to this House as events unfold. I've constantly said that the answer to the detention center's woes is in part to move people out of that facility on a timely basis. Sometimes I wonder whether we've robbed the church or whether we are intent on being the keystone cops with regard to what is necessary to maintain that facility. But it's a work in progress, and we will continue to do the best we can with the resources which we have available to us. The government of the Bahamas does not condone or treat by policy anyone in an inhumane fashion. I've offered certain responsible non-governmental agencies the right to enter that facility at will and to work with those agencies to make any immediate improvements that are required to that facility. And this includes the opposition spokesman on foreign affairs. What I object to, however, is this doctrine of gotcha. And it's again that I say this is not North Korea, this is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, the ire of some people who are against the policy because of their ancestry, talking about voting against the PLP because of this policy. But here's what came from the other side of the debate. This letter came to me the day after the legislation was introduced in Parliament for the belongers permit. And I'm only pointing this out in case people don't know about the extreme sensitivity and how highly charged this matter is on both sides. Here's what the letter says. Dear Minister, I made the time to congratulate you when I thought you were on a path to finally address and stem the encroachment of illegal immigrants, Haitians in particular, into this country. I must convey my absolute disappointment and dismay at the recent communication regarding the belongers permit. Anson Ali, Jetta Baptiste, Luby Georges, and their leader Fred Smith are so gleeful they can barely contain themselves. Bahamas pundit is right. For reasons known only to yourself and your party, you seek to open the floodgates to people who will overrun and destroy the Bahamas as we know it. If the Americans have shared with me the negative consequences for our country, they certainly have shared the same with you and others in your party. You have chosen overnight to devalue the Bahamian passport. Hubert Ingram also chose to dabble with Haitianizing the electorate with mass swearing-in sessions prior to the last election. Thousands of persons who had never voted PLP voted en masse in protest, and his newly minted citizens could not save them. Those of us who despise the trivialization of our citizenship will not take this lightly. We could not ever support giving this nation to another people. The last chargé d'affaires of the U.S. Embassy made it clear to me that the U.S. never encouraged giving citizenship to children of illegal immigrants born here. And they know why. That's the end of the letter. I'm not sure what you say to that, except this, Mr. Speaker. First of all, this policy has nothing to do with citizenship. It's not about citizenship. So that is absolutely wrong. Secondly, the fact is, all of the remedies are available in law today in the Immigration Act. All of them. So there's no new remedy here or no change in policy. This is only about facilitating legal migration to the Bahamas. What I said was this. We could have insisted, and I suppose we still can if the House doesn't agree with the Act, that if you want residence in the Bahamas, that you have to pay the $1,000 a year fee. But anyone who is in this country now, born to non-national parents, who's over the age of 18, will have to pay $1,000 for a residence fee per year until they get citizenship or permanent residence with the right to work, but for the intervention of this legislation. So we could have left it as it is. The point is that faced with some difficult alternatives, you as an adjudicating authority have to look at things as dispassionately as you can. You understand what one side says, you understand what another side says. And as much as there's this temptation to accept all the adulation and accolades as people walk down Bay Street, you know that you have a responsibility to act for the greater good and the long-term interest of the country. I certainly disagreed vehemently with the irresponsible statements being made by those who purport to represent this dispossessed category in the country and have made the most outrageous, slanderous, defamatory statements generally about the government, me specifically, and then in aid and comfort of their effort trying to tie me with them, which I reject absolutely. No, don't put me in that same boat, because I'm not with you. When someone gets up on a public platform in this country and calls for a bloody revolution, the day you said that, the day he said it, the next day, I called him up. I said, are you going out of your mind? I don't care what policy you disagree with in this country. We're not going there. We're not going there. So I know, see, I know this, and people say, oh, you know, you're taking this person, you're getting upset. When someone tells you you run in a gas chamber, are you crazy? I mean, jeepers. If you want to disagree with the policy, you could certainly say it. And then come running up to me in the airport and says, well, you know, I may have misstated things a little bit, you know, misstated. So the point I'm making is I've presented both extremes here. And what I'm saying is that the government has to come down in the middle of this, because our responsibility is the peace and good order of the country. obtained independence in 1973. And it has fallen to us, you know, the British would give you the impression, this is not my thought, Pericles Maler said this at George Stewart's funeral, that, you know, British packed up and left in 1973, and their narrative is it was all quite neat and a nice package, and they handed off this wonderful country to us, and, you know, it says, go you into the future and do well. And I think their parting gift to us was $800,000 spent on building the police college. Said, happy birthday. And then went off to London. So, up to that, the country was paying for itself, running itself anyway. So, the point, though, that Pericles Maler made at this funeral was that they had the job, he and George Stewart. He was a young lawyer at the Attorney General's office. George Stewart was then worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And they had to create a Ministry of Foreign Affairs from scratch. You know, nothing left, no handover notes, no nothing. The British left. Same thing with this nation. We have to fill in the spaces. It's a living, breathing thing, the nation is. It's not static. So all of us have to fill in the spaces. And, you know, the Founding Fathers could not have thought of everything. And I've been with this issue. 1972, Darrell Roll is at the in London, and he gives me a ride from the Dorchester Hotel, and he tells me, you know, look, we've put this provision in the Constitution, we've just agreed with this provision in the Constitution that's going to help resolve the illegal migration problem. And I couldn't have known as an 18-year-old in London in the back of that cab that in 2015 I'd be the one here trying to, you know, figure out where do we go next.
He was passing the baton right there.
He's passing the baton, you know, and he's one of the closest. Yeah, because my mom was his secretary, and, you know, so, yes, quite close. But what I'm saying is, it's a work in progress. We have to fill in the spaces, and that's what we're doing. And this is not, it's not a perfect solution. I don't pretend for any minute that this is a perfect solution. But we have to keep working on it. And the point I'm making, though, generally is that people should remain calm and rational in this debate. Calm and rational. Time is up for. Member yields. On immigration is that of a balancing act. And you know that the general principle with regard to immigration matters is that the only time a work permit is supposed to be issued is if there are no Bahamians available for the job. And that's the principle which applies across the board. Some people seem to have confused this when they sign these heads of agreement, which indicate that they can get a certain number of work permits. And my view is that notwithstanding that, they have to meet the test of whether or not a Bahamian is available for the job, with certain exceptions. And the exception would be where you're an owner's representative. But the test has to be whether there's a Bahamian available for the job. There are a number of people who, in dealing with the Immigration Act, they've been talking mainly about the problem of the migrant who comes by boat, but not dealing with those people who come to the Bahamas, land here legally, and on the face of it are here in the Bahamas for some lawful purpose, but that lawful purpose morphs into an illegal activity. For example, over the last 3 days, over the last few months, we've been dealing with a number of people who come in as tourists and then begin to work, fly out on the weekends and come back, so it looks as if they're tourists, but they're in fact working in the country. And so just as we have to deal with the category of people who come here without landed permission, you also have to deal with the people who come in under the guise of being tourists and then suddenly become something else. And these people compete at an executive level. You ask the people in Eleuthera, for example, or Harbor Island. There's a vexing problem of people who are masquerading as tourists but are actually working as property managers in these various homes. And the Bahamian professionals who are property managers are terribly upset about this problem. And what I would say to them is that they should really keep in touch with both the Department of Labor and the Department of Immigration so that we can keep tabs on this problem. Often you have these people who say they are they've got a condominium in the Bahamas, and they are acting as people who are working and doing various jobs around the condominium, and thinking that on the basis of this they don't have to get permission to work from the Immigration Department. The fact that you have or own a condominium or some business here in the Bahamas does not mean that you can work in that entity without a work permit. And the law is quite clear on this. If you look at the definition of gainfully employed, whoever wrote that statute defined gainfully employed so broadly that it means, in essence, any activity, whether for cash or kind. So the fact that you don't get money, the fact that the money doesn't pass hands in the Bahamas, none of that matters. If you're working in the Bahamas and you're receiving a benefit, the law says you are gainfully employed and you need a work permit to do so. And Bahamians who see this ought to complain. Immigration authorities will follow these complaints up to the best of their ability and will bring whatever sanctions are available in law. And the law, as I read it, says that at any time the Director of Immigration can withdraw the permission of someone who has landed here in the Bahamas and tell you it's time to leave, can in fact see you out of the country. That's the position of the Department of Immigration and the Minister. If you're not a Bahamian citizen, the Director of Immigration can withdraw your permission to be landed here at any time. And it's, you know, the thing is that there's too much abuse of it, too many complaints about it, and they seem to treat the immigration laws with short shrift. They give the impression that they can spread a few dollars around, call someone on the phone, and get straight. But I want to say to those who go around boasting that they can do that, if that is heard within earshot of a reliable informant, that is grounds for you to be put on the restricted list and seen out of the Bahamas. Let me repeat that. If that is heard around someone who is a reliable witness for intelligence purposes, that is grounds for you to be put on the restricted list and be put out of the Bahamas. Because what you're doing is undermining the peace, good order, and the laws of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And as long as immigration has that authority on whether you can land or not land, I think that is an important sanction to exercise. So I'm asking Bahamians to be vigilant about all of this, to work, because they're actually, Bahamians generally are the foot soldiers of our country. This country is all we've got. All we've got. And we can't, jump on a boat and go to the U.S. and just set up shop. They'll quickly send you back here. For the least infraction of their laws, they'll send you back here. So this is what we've got. This is the one area, immigration, that is still universally accepted around the world as the one area where governments have an absolute right to say and do as they wish, subject to the humane treatment, the laws of your country. Immigration is an absolute right which resides in the government. So those people who abuse our country will be excluded from the country. So I think that's a message which needs to go out loud and clear. And I don't want it to be used as a matter which is abusive to people. That's not the intention. What I'm saying is, to everyone who is not a Bahamian, who lives in this country, who works in this country, it is a privilege and an honor to do so. And it is one that can be withdrawn if Bahamians find that you are abusing them and abusing the country. And I believe I speak for both sides of the divide in this House on that issue. We are united on that point. Our national security, then, Mr. Speaker, demands this bill. And it is only in that vein that the bill is offered. And again, the principle is, if you are not documented to be in the Bahamas, you will be sent back home. So please get your houses in order. It is important to get the house in order. Now, when I spoke earlier, we talked about the new section of the bill, which deals with the creation of the resident belongers permit, which is clause 14 of the bill. I just want to be sure, for clarity, to explain what this bill is. It says the directive immigration may, on application, made in the prescribed form and in accordance with the regulations and the directions of any of the board, grant a resident belonger a permit in the prescribed form to a person, and it's A, and this is the category, to a person born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents who is entitled to apply for registration as a citizen of the Bahamas under Article 7 of the Constitution and is residing permanently in the Bahamas at the time the application is made. So that's the category. That's this category, born in the Bahamas to non-national parents who have this contingent right to citizenship of the Bahamas at age 18 and before their 19th birthday. So it's applicable to those born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents who's entitled to apply for registration as a citizen of the Bahamas under Article 7 of the Constitution and is residing permanently in the Bahamas at the time the application is made. So I want to make that point. The other point I'd like to also make is the fact that we have been planning for some time operations in Abaco. I made the point that as a result of the pressure being put on the middle of the country, Abaco has become the soft area, so to speak, or the soft target for migrants, because they believe that there are disparate communities in far-flung areas of the island where people can melt into the community and simply not be found or seen. And you saw most recently the reports of people being found on boats trying to make their way to Abaco, being smuggled out of Abaco. So operations are in a very late stage of planning. The staging group has drawn up a list of suggested operations which have to be approved by myself and the Minister for National Security. So those are days away, subject to, of course, the resources and timing. And one of the issues we're watching very carefully is we want to be sure that the detention center is not overcrowded, to be sure that overcrowding is not a problem in the detention center. So we are doing our job to make sure that the detention center is kept clean, that it is humane, that the food is served as nutritious, which I addressed earlier, and that it is a place where people can be housed properly. And the intention is that when people are housed there, they should not be there for any long period of time. So this job of immigration is a thankless job. There is no act which you can do, at least I've found, in immigration, for which people will say, you've done a good job. You know, no one is satisfied about everything, and it seems that, of course, you can't satisfy everyone. You'll never satisfy everyone. But generally speaking, with regard to this, we have the support of the Bahamian population that something needs to be done. And what we are doing with these administrative measures will send out the signal that we mean business with regard to the documentation of people in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Public policy is about the best outcome for the greater good. So you do your best and you move on. I have no sleepless nights about this, and I ask for the support of the House and say we've had enough debate and talking about this. This society has bigger fish to fry. The eyes of the world are upon us, and we have nothing to hide. But this is our business. So I end where I began with that prayer from Father Daniel Boyd, where he says, it's morning, Jesus. I've got to move fast. Get into the bathroom, wash up, grab a bite to eat, run some more. Where am I running? You know these things I can't understand. It's not that I need to have you tell me. What counts most is just that somebody knows, and it's you. That helps a lot. So I'll follow along, okay? But lead, Lord. Now I've got to run. Are you running with me, Jesus? Amen. Amen. As for me and my house. Yes, the big tabernacle. Yeah. As for me, Mr. Speaker, as I commend this bill, I once again end where I started. I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. One people, united in love and service. Thank you.